afternoon. On behalf of the Tourism Authority and all of our tourism partners here on the island, I'm delighted to be able to tell you all about our third quarter results for 2017. So, as you know, the quarterly results always take a little bit longer to compile than the monthly results. So this takes us up through the end of August 2017. Let me give you the headlines, and then we will look at the executive summary, and then we can dive into some of the numbers a little bit, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have. And we did want to use the opportunity while we have you in front of us to remind you of some of the things that are going on, because I know there's been a lot of news coming out about events and tourism lately, so we'll do a quick recap of some of the things that are coming in the months ahead. So first of all, to give you the headlines on Q3. Q3 was another phenomenal month of growth for tourism. So you'll know that although everybody likes to talk about volume, we like to lead on value. From a value perspective, Q3 was a great month. Sorry, a great quarter. So we finished the quarter with spending by leisure air visitors up by 15%. Which is a really phenomenal achievement in what is always the biggest quarter of the year. So that makes 7 consecutive months, 7 consecutive quarters of growth in tourism, which is really phenomenal. Now, we like to focus on value. We know that the number everybody likes to look at is volume. Well, actually, by that metric, tourism is also up in the third quarter. So this makes the 7th consecutive quarter of growth in visitor arrivals as well. In the third quarter, we were up by 6%, and I'll dive into that number a little bit further on, because it actually could have been even better if not for some of the impact that we saw from some of the hurricane coverage and hurricane warnings. But more on that in a minute. One other statistic that is really worth sharing is younger visitors. So you know that we're very focused on targeting a younger, more experiential and adventure-seeking visitor. We are really seeing those results continue. So in the third quarter, 90% of our growth in visitors came from visitors under 45. So these are visitors that are a new generation of first-time visitors to Bermuda. And it's fantastic to see that they continue to come. I did want to acknowledge the month of September. So September was a challenging month. It's actually the only monthly decline that we've seen since December 2015. By air arrivals, leisure air arrivals, we finished the month down about 4%, and more on that a little bit later. So if we look at the quarter in summary. Which is hopefully there behind me. Yep, absolutely. So for the third quarter, we said that we had spending up 15%. We had leisure air arrivals up 6%. We also saw a big increase in air capacity. So, of course, people can't get here unless there are seats available on planes. So thanks to the expansion of service that we had, particularly through JetBlue in 2017, we have an 11% increase in capacity, which we're doing a really good job of filling. So we continue to see growth coming out of our primary markets. So the increase in air capacity is primarily out of New York and Boston, and those continue to be the markets where we're seeing the highest absolute growth. And it was a good quarter for our hotel industry. So RevPAR, which is revenue per available hotel room, finished the quarter up 11%, and hotel occupancy rose by 4%. So the third quarter, as our busiest quarter, is the one in which the hotels are always the closest to their theoretical maximum. In 2017, for the quarter, hotel occupancy was 79%, which up 4% from last year. Last year was 76%. But if we look back at 2015, our hotels were only at 67%. So in 2015, even in our peak quarter, our hotels were not really close to profitable. So we are in strongly profitable territory for the quarter, which is fantastic to see. As we continue to grow, actually things like revenue optimization will become increasingly important for our hotel partners because we have limited hotel capacity here on the island. So we're going to have to work hard to get some incremental growth in the third quarter of next year. So if we turn from the third quarter to looking at what this now looks like year to date, we continue to see a strong performance overall as well. So including the third quarter, we're now up 11% in arrivals and 22% in leisure spending for the year to date, which is a really phenomenal result. Consistent with what we saw in quarter, we continue to see that growth coming primarily out of Boston, up 11%, and New York, up 18% in capacity, and with the increase in demand coming from there as well. And hotel occupancy year to date is now up 9%, which is great, but we still have work to do as we try to broaden out the season to get our hotels to be consistently profitable year round. So that gives you a good idea of where we are. I guess if we now dig into some of those numbers a little bit, first of all, if we look at visitor spending, which we said is the most important metric to us here at the Tourism Authority, leisure spending year to date is up 22%. That is a really phenomenal result. Actually, leisure spending and business spending is up by similar amounts. So we're seeing all of our visitors to the island spending more. That is partly a result of higher hotel rates, and that is partly a result of them doing more while they're here on the island. So that is great to see. Visitor air arrivals, we said, were up 10%. There we're seeing vacation up slightly more than other classes. So the straggler of the year has actually been business travel, which I think there's been a bit of displacement really from America's Cup, whereas we've seen higher hotel rates and higher airfares. Some folks have chosen not to travel this year, but hopefully we will see that return next year. Looking at the breakdown of visitors, I told you that 90% of our growth was coming from visitors under 45. The good news is that we continue to see growth in almost all age brackets as well. So we did see a very slight decline in visitors 45 to 54, but actually when you look at all visitors over 45, we're continuing to gain ground there as well. We're just growing at a much faster rate among younger visitors. I guess let's move on to look at the quarter by month. So I told you that it could have been an even better quarter. So you'll see from these numbers that in July we were up by 9%. In August we were up by 10.5%. Going into September, hotel pace was actually tracking 12.5% ahead of the year before. And of course, what then happened was we had a pretty stormy September. So thanks to operational issues related to the hurricanes in the south, as well as some media confusion, we lost some ground. We lost some ground in the month. So we saw 10 flights canceled, so we lost a week of flights out of Miami. And because of aircraft availability, we also lost a JetBlue flight, an American Airlines flight from New York. They simply didn't have the aircraft in the right place at the right time. We had a fair amount of confusion, as we'll dive into. In fact, actually, if we go to the next slide, there we go, fabulous. We had a real spike in cancellations in the quarter. So that's how we went from 12.5% up to actually, although air arrivals ended the quarter ended the month slightly down, actually the hotels still managed to eke out a slight gain. So we wound up with hotel occupancy up 1% on last year. And so that was a mix of operational issues as well as media confusion. So I think just about everyone in Bermuda woke up at some point in September to a text message saying, "Are you all right?" That was because we had the New York Times, the BBC, and NBC News all mix up Bermuda and Barbuda. And the ramifications of that are pretty quick and immediate. People cancel. We also saw Bermuda being put in the storm path of the National Weather Center in the U.S. Consistently. So there were several hurricane warnings issued for Bermuda. Really interestingly, I think when we look at September of this year, when we were not hit by a hurricane, and compare it to October of last year when we were, we saw more cancellations this September because of the media confusion that happened predominantly in the U.S. around Bermuda and Barbuda. So the Tourism Authority responded, I think, pretty quickly to that challenge. So we did reach out to all of our stakeholders and partners. We also reached out to the media that got it wrong and requested corrections. But of course, by that point, the damage is done. If you visit any of our media channels today, you'll find a Bermuda is open message, which explains that we were not in the hurricane's path. We also actually made a donation along with our partner for the Chicos Conference, which is HVS. We made a donation to hurricane relief in the Caribbean as a way of getting the message out that Bermuda was not impacted. We also communicated through our media partners about Bermuda's other efforts to help with the relief. And we did that as a way of communicating that Bermuda was A-OK and open for business. Since then, we have really gone, I think, on the offense in trying to capture what we'll call displaced business. So both leisure travel and group business that would have gone to the Caribbean, and try and redirect them to Bermuda instead. And we should see the results of that in the months ahead. So I think we've already talked about hotel performance, but strongly up. So hotel occupancy is up 9% year to date, which is great. But RevPAR, which is revenue per hotel room, is up almost 20%. So what we're seeing happen there is that our hotel partners have been able to command a higher rate, which was partly off the America's Cup, but actually continued in the third quarter as well, where they've been able to extract more revenue from each guest and each hotel room. And we are seeing the benefits of that flowing through to our hotels. Looking at the split of hotels versus everyone else, it's no secret that we are big fans of Airbnb and the vacation rental market. We think that on occasion, that kind of accommodation is preferable for some of our younger visitors. We also know that vacation rental is one way that Bermudian homeowners can participate directly in the tourism economy, and we continue to see that gain share. And what's really interesting is that actually what we seem to be doing is succeeding in converting some visitors that previously stayed with friends and relatives into paying vacation rental guests. So I know some of my own guests this summer did exactly that, which is that they came to visit me, they stayed a few days with us, and then they moved into a vacation rental where they'd have more space and a bit more privacy. So we've actually been able to extract more revenue from those kind of visitors through the growth of vacation rental. I think that's actually, that's fantastic. So looking at the vacation rental market year to date, we continue to see growth there, outstripping all others. So we're up 43% year to date, which is just a phenomenal result. Looking at leisure air arrivals by country, again, we continue to be up everywhere. The UK remains one of our most challenging markets. It is far less relatively important to us than the US, but it is a significant contributor of visitors. And of course, the London flight is important to the outbound market and the insurance market. Because of the high price of that UK flight, we continue to find that market challenging, but we are seeing a little bit of growth there, and we are trying some new and different things in the market there. So you will have seen that we just won an award for our out-of-home advertising in the UK, which was actually back in January and February of this year. The real innovation there was that was a cost-effective way for a small destination like Bermuda to be able to do that kind of advertising, because it was really focused only on those visitors that can afford the high airfare to visit here. Looking at arrivals by sea, we continue to see the effect of the America's Cup there. We are strongly up in yacht arrivals. That is very clearly an America's Cup effect, although we are working to make sure that legacy for Bermuda continues. So that gives you a summary of the numbers. If we look at some of the things that are up ahead, This will be interesting because I think the slides behind me are not exactly what's in front of me, but we'll see how this goes. First up is we continue to focus on sports tourism. So we have swimming, diving, rugby, and track and field teams all headed to Bermuda this winter and this spring. So our partnership with the National Sports Center, continues to be robust and continues to grow. There is actually a limit to how many of these teams Bermuda can accommodate at one time. So we are actually near the point where we need to turn our focus to some additional sports to see how we can further grow sports tourism in Bermuda. The National Sports Center can only hold so many swim teams. What's next, Glenn? November conferences. There we go. All right, so that I don't have in front of me, but that's okay. So this week, Bermuda is the host to Chico's. So Chico's is the Caribbean Hotel Investors Conference. So this will bring 350 visitors to Bermuda who are either investors in the region's hotel industry or advisors to those investors or the hotel operators and brands themselves. So we, of course, in our marketing position Bermuda as Caribbean influenced, but apart from the Caribbean. From an investor point of view, we tend to be lumped into the same portfolio. So it's a very good time to have this group of people in Bermuda while there's investment money that is looking for somewhere to go, and where some of our destinations to the south are actually perhaps not able to absorb investment that they were previously looking for. So it's a really good time to have this group in Bermuda, and great weather to have them here as well. So we'll be showcasing some of the development opportunities that exist in the hotel industry here in Bermuda. There are 7 other conferences that in one way or another are associated with the BTA that are happening here on the island this November. So, despite that September blip, we predict a really strong fourth quarter, which is largely but not exclusively off the back of group business. What's next? The Adventure Almanac? There we go. How about that? We've just published a new version of the Adventure Almanac. So this is a guide to what happens in Bermuda in year-round, but with a particular focus on all of the activities, in particular the experiences and adventures that you can have in Bermuda in the shoulder season and in the winter. So this is what we'll be marketing through the next quarter as we try to continue to draw those younger visitors to Bermuda for different kinds of experiences other than just beach holidays. As we build on the sailing calendar, which is hopefully next, we have a really busy calendar next year. So next year, there will be no America's Cup, but we still have a really packed sailing calendar. And several of these events are what we would call America's Cup legacy events. So in particular, I think the Oyster Regatta, which is a first time in Bermuda event, which is coming here after several years in Antigua, will be a fantastic event for Bermuda. And the Atlantic Anniversary Regatta, which will bring a large number of boats here on their way. They're going from Europe to the Caribbean and then back again with that return leg of the race letting off from Bermuda, is a fantastic first time for Bermuda event. We are also, of course, the host to the Moth Worlds, which should be a really exciting tournament and great fun to watch. We've also just published our guide to the shoulder season, which I hope is what is now on the screen behind me. So Uncover Bermuda, which we used to call Uncover the Arts, is a really detailed guide for visitors of building out that adventure almanac, all the things that are happening in Bermuda in the shoulder months, in the winter months. So this is now available online and offline, and has a bunch of new events in it this year that really recognize that many of our experience providers are continuing to operate now through the winter months rather than being purely seasonal. And that is exactly what we need, so we continue to bring visitors here, and we need to give them something to do. Last but not least is, of course, the triathlon, which will be this April, where we're expecting 1,200 visitors to the island for both an elite race and an amateur race. The courses for that, I'm pleased to say, have just been approved, and will be published imminently. So I know many people have been saying, where are they? Took a little while to get all of the stakeholders aligned, but I am really excited that we now have approved routes for both the elite race and the amateur race, which I think will provide a spectacular setting for those races. And we really look forward to welcoming them and, of course, Flora Duffy home to Bermuda in April for those.